Hi there. In today's video, we're going to take a look at outputting data using the print and the dot format methods built into Python. Before we get started, we're going to start a new project. So I have my welcome screen from PyCharm opened already, and I'm just going to click New Project. I'm going to name it Print. I'm using my pipenv, my virtual environment, and it's going to be running Python 3.9. So we're going to hit create. I'm just going to readjust my screen real quick. Close out the tips, and then PyCharm gives us this kind of filler code. We don't need that, so I'm just going to go ahead. Working with data. Something you will quickly see when learning how to program is that programs work with data. So that's kind of the basis of all programming, is taking data, receiving data, building data, and then working with data, running processes on data, calculating data, and then finally outputting that data. So let's take a look. We can do data equals 10, and I'm going to go up to run, and I'm going to run my code. And we get no errors, but this is boring. And there's no output of the data. We don't really know what's going on with the program. We just know that it ran and something happens. We have absolutely no idea if it, besides the no error message, we don't know if it worked, if we got the data we were looking for. So that's why most programs have some form of output to keep the user kind of in the loop on what's going on during the program's execution. The most basic way to output data to a user in a Python program is going to be with the print method. And the print method works by, on a new line, writing the print keyword, so print, and then having an open and close parentheses. So with this right here, if I was to run my program, nothing happens because I'm not passing any sort of data to be printed out. So it's called print because you're going to print kind of like a printer would. It's going to print information to this general console, right? This is my program output right here. So all we're going to do is I'm just going to take the data variable that I've created, and I'm going to pass it in between the parentheses of the print method. So now when I run my code, I should get some output, which is going to be the value of data, which is 10. So when we run this code, we should now see a simple output right here. And there you go. So we have 10. But in all honesty, even that is still a little boring. The user might run the code and not know, what does 10 represent? Is that 10 meters? Is that 10 degrees? Is that 10 days? Is that $10? What does that data mean? So now we're going to take a look at creating more user-friendly outputs that really do keep the user in the loop on what's going on and keep them informed on what's happening in the program. So the easiest way to make more informative outputs to the user is by concatenating strings. So you can take a string, a sentence, or set of characters, and combine them together. So we're going to still use that print statement, print. We got our print keyword, open, close parentheses, and now I'm going to make a string or a sentence for user output. I'll say the temp outside is, and then I'm going to use a plus because I want to combine pieces of data, and I'm going to put temp. Temp. And when I run this, we should get the output. The temp outside is, and then 78, because that's the value of temperature. And you will see we get an error message. The error is a type error, which says you can only concatenate string, not int, to string. So this is called concatenation when you're trying to combine two strings together. But unfortunately, if we take this, I'm going to print type. So the reason we get an error is because the computer was trying to add a string, which is, this sentence in quotations with what it believed to be another string. But in reality, 78 is a number and it's not a set of characters. So the computer is trying to add a sentence with a number. So when it sees sentence plus number, it doesn't know how to add those values together. So if I run this little line right here, this print type temp, you'll see that our data temp variable is not a string, but it's an int. So it's an integer, it's a number. So the computer doesn't know how to add those together. So in order to get this print statement working and get this user output correct, I've got to wrap my integer data with this string casting. So all it does is it takes whatever is inside the parentheses. Here, I'll even pull it out of the print statement so you can see it right here. It looks like that. So it takes whatever you put inside the parentheses and turns it into a string. So now the print statement is going to concatenate correctly, and it's going to say the temp outside string plus the string of temp, the string of our variable temp. And it's going to know how to put those together, and we should get a correct output. So let me run this again. We'll see what happens. There you go. So the temp outside is 78. We turned our integer, our number variable, our number data into string data, into actual letters and characters that the computer knew how to put together. Every time the print method is invoked in Python, it actually creates a new line. So if I Control Z, go back, you can see this single line gets printed out on a single line. Now, if I was to take this right here and remove it and then add another print statement and pass my data into it, you're going to see this is going to output onto two lines. I find this to be kind of intuitive because each print statement is on a new line itself. So basically kind of how you see it right here is how it's going to print out. You're going to see one line, the temp outside is, and then on a new line, you're going to see the temperature data being outputted. So if I hit run, just like I said, you can see on the first line, temp outside is, and then 78, just the blank data. This isn't the best way to use this, but you can, we could do something like this. Let me back up again. We could add another line right here and say, maybe we can make this look somewhat interesting. So now we've got two print statements. We've got weather report, and then below it the actual weather report. So if I hit run, you can see on two lines, the first line, the first print statement, we have weather report, and on the second line we actually have the weather report. Another way that we can achieve new line printing without invoking a print method twice is by using the new line character. So the new line character is going to be in quotations because it's going to get read by the computer as if it was a string or a set of characters, and it's a \n. So you can see that inside the quotes, the \n becomes it might be /, I'm not sure. This slash character, this slash right here, I believe that's \n. You can see that it highlights orange as opposed to all the other characters inside of the quotations that we've seen so far. And that's because the computer, once it sees that slash, it reads that this becomes a special character called the new line character. So if let me back out a little bit, and I'm going to take this whole thing. I'm actually going to take this right here, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it in here. Just follow along with me. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it here. So we're kind of combining the two. Now, if I was to run this, you're going to see one line output, right? You got weather report, and then right after the little stars is the temp outside is 78. If I was to tack in a little \n, you can see, so we're going to have the weather report, new line, and then the temp outside is, oh, that was gonna happen. And then the temp outside is, and then our temperature data. So if I run it, you can see we get a new line exactly where we said we were gonna get a new line. I find having to wrap all of my output data in the string casting, the str, and then we put temp in there to make temperature from an integer number to a string. I find that to be kind of annoying, and I really don't like to use it. I actually like to use the format method for a few reasons. First off would be the reason where I don't have to cast or wrap my data in the correct data type cast method, like I just showed you. And the other one is that I can input multiple pieces of data into strings to create more dynamic outputs for users in a very efficient way. So the way that it works is you have a string. So let's make a print, and you've got your quotation. So we've got our sentence, our output, and I'll say the weather, or we'll say the temp outside is, and then all I do inside of the string that I'm trying to print out is I add a set of curly brackets wherever I want my data to be outputted. So I've got an open and close curly brackets, and right in here is where my data that I'm going to input is going to be printed out. At the end of the string, and still inside the parentheses, I'm going to tack on a dot format, and then inside the parentheses of dot format, I'm going to input my temp. So all we're doing is we have a string, we're printing out a string, and directly at the end of that string, at the closing quotations, I'm going to tack on dot format, and then I'm going to tell it which format to input into these curly brackets right here. So you're going to see the temp outside is, and then curly brackets. Or not curly brackets, but temp, where the curly brackets are. So you can see that we got the output exactly like we said. Now, it doesn't have to go right there. Just to show you, I could put it here if that made sense for us. So wherever the computer sees those curly brackets, if it reads a dot format at the end of the statement, it's going to say, oh, put the data in this parentheses into those curly brackets. So you can see this right here. The temp 78 outside is, again, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it kind of just proves the point that wherever I put these curly brackets, the data is going to be put inside of them. So I can say 78, the temperature is. That's kind of like a Yoda, right? The 78, the temperature is. So something to be aware of is that the dot format method requires that there's one curly bracket for every piece of data in the, so one curly bracket in the string for every one piece of data passed in the parentheses of the format. So if I was to add another set of curly brackets, the computer is going to kind of wig out and not really know what to do. So if I try to run this, you're going to see index error, the replacement index 1 out of range for positional argument tuple. It's saying, hey, I'm kind of looking for another piece of data because you're passing another curly bracket. And so if I put temp again, you're going to see 78, 78. Okay, so you need to have one curly bracket for a piece of data. It's kind of a, they come together. To explain this a little further, I'm going to kind of modify this. I'll say temp day 1, and then I'll make another variable called temp day 2, and we'll change this to, let's say, 83. Okay, and then I could say before I go too far, cause an error. We'll say the temp outside is, and I'll get rid of this, and I'll say tomorrow's temp will be, and then I'm going to drop another curly bracket, and I'm going to take this new variable I just created and comma separated. So inside the parentheses of the format, I'm going to do comma and then drop the next piece of data. And so now the curly brackets, we've got one curly bracket, two curly bracket, which is going to correspond to temp day 1 in the first and temp day 2 in the second. So we should see 78 and then 83 in the curly bracket. So if I hit run, you see the temp outside is 78. Tomorrow's temp will be 83. The last thing we're going to look at is adding just another piece of data inside the format option. And it's going to be a little bit different compared to the temperature data. I just want to show this, and then maybe I'll create a third variable. But we could say the temp outside now, we'll say now is, we'll say tomorrow you will see a So this is kind of long and obnoxious, but I think I could drop this right here. So we've got 3 brackets now. We've got the temp outside is bracket. Tomorrow you will see a bracket difference with temps around bracket. So that's 3 pieces of data we're looking for. And currently we only have 2 pieces of data. So that's going to be in between temperature 1 and temperature 2. We need the difference between these two. So all I'm going to do is after the first comma, I'm going to drop a set of parentheses, and I'm going to take temp day 1, and I'm going to, or actually I want temp day 2 first, and I'm going to subtract it from temp day 1, and I'm going to put another comma. So now you can see all my kind of highlighting and errors go away, because now I have 3 brackets. I've got my format option, and then I've got one piece of data, comma, another piece of data, comma, another piece of data. So I have 3 pieces of data. This may look like 2 pieces of data, but it's wrapped inside the parentheses, and it's going to be the return value of temp day 1 minus temp day 2 minus temp day 1. So if I hit run, so obviously this output could be a little bit cleaner, but it says the temp outside now is 78. Tomorrow you will see a 5 difference with temps around 83. So let's put this all together now, and let's take everything that we just learned and put it into a little bit more of a sophisticated program. I'm going to be using a couple different topics that we have not seen yet, but just don't worry about those and just try to focus on the data creation and then the output of the data. Okay, so I've outlined right here just 2 little things. I'll say a weather report to tell the current temp and tomorrow's temp. So we're going to need 2 pieces of data. I'm going to say current temp equals, we'll say 78. And then I'll say next day temp equals 83. Same pieces of data that we had for the last program, just different variable names now. Okay, now what we want to do is we should get the difference of these pieces of data, because what I want the program to do is if the temperature for tomorrow is going to be greater than the next day, then I want it to say an increase in temperature, and if the next day's temperature is lower than the current day, I want the output to say a decrease in temperature during the middle of the report. So what I want to say is I'll say diff temp equals, and I'll say next day temp minus current day temp. Okay, and just to check, I'm going to really quickly print out. Let's say diff, not dev. We'll print out this diff temperature. So I'm going to run it, and you're going to see there's a +5. So there's going to be an increase of 5 degrees for the next day. Okay. Now, if this was flipped, if I made this, let's make this 73, you're going to see that the temperature is going to be -5. So we can actually use that to our advantage. We can actually check this data and say, okay, well, if the return of this subtraction operation is positive, then we know that the temperature is going to be an increase for the next day. But if we know that the number is negative, then we know that it's going to be a decrease. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this, I'm going to say diff text. Okay, we're going to call it diff, or yeah, we're going to call it diff text. I'll say diff text equals, and I'm going to say increase. Okay, so it's going to be increased to start out with. And so if the number is positive, if it's greater than 0, we're going to keep the value of diff text to be increase. And if the number is negative, we're going to change the value of diff text to decrease. Okay, so I'm going to check the value of so we're going to say if diff temp is less than 0, we're going to make diff text, or diff text is going to equal decrease. Okay, so now when we output, we can add diff text in there, and we can say the current temperature is 78. Tomorrow there will be an increase in temperature to 83. So I'm going to put this back to I believe it was at 83, but we'll put it there for now. So what's happening so far, we're getting the difference in temperature right here by subtracting next day temp minus current temp, and then we're checking the value so that we can properly change the variable diff text for our output. We'll see this right now. And we can use all 4 pieces of these data for our output. So I can print, I'll say weather report. And then on another print, I will do the current temp is, and we'll do this. We'll say tomorrow there will be a increase or decrease of, diff temp, and then tomorrow there will be an increase of 5 degrees coming in at, do that right there. And then I'm going to do dot format like we did, and this is going to be a lot, so I'm just going to hit enter now, and then I'm just going to follow along with the curly brackets that I have, and I'm going to input the data that I need. So the first one, the current temp is, so we're going to want current temp, and then just for formatting reasons, I'm going to back this off and do that right there. So I'm going to do comma and then hit enter, and the next one is going to be tomorrow there will be an increase or decrease. So I'm going to say diff text. So there will be an increase or decrease of, and then we're going to say, there's one other thing. I'm going to have to check. So if diff text is less than 0, I still want it to be a positive number just for the output. I don't want it to say there will be a decrease of -5 degrees tomorrow. I just want it to say there will be a decrease of 5 degrees. So I'm just going to simply do diff temp equals diff temp times -1. So if it's already a negative number, now we're going to multiply it by a negative number, and it's going to become a positive number for our output. So the next piece of output is going to be our diff temp. I don't know why it keeps doing that. And the last thing that we need is next day temp, because our last piece of data is coming in at blank, which is going to be coming in at the next day's temperature. So if I hit enter and put that there, and then we run it. Well, let me overview what we got right here again. So we have 3 variables: current temp, next day temp, and diff temp, which is going to start off at increase. And we're going to get the diff text. Diff temperature is going to get the return of next day temp minus current day temp so that we can see the difference in temperature. The program is going to check if the different temperature is less than 0, because then we know the outcome of the subtraction operation, whether it was going to be an increase in temperature or a decrease. If the result is a negative number, then we know that the next day temperature is going to be a decrease. So we set diff text to decrease as opposed to its start off as increase. And then we also change the diff temperature to a positive number just for data formatting. And then we have our outputs here. So we've got one print statement that says the weather report, right? And then we have our next print statement, which is the current temp is curly bracket. Tomorrow there will be a curly bracket of curly bracket coming in at curly bracket. Each one of those curly brackets responds to each one of these pieces of data. So in our dot format method, I have one piece of data, or one curly bracket, two curly bracket, three curly bracket, four curly bracket, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of data. So when I press run, we should get an output that says the current temp. It should. Let's just run it and see what we get. There you go. So the current temperature is 78. Tomorrow there will be an increase of 5 coming in at 83. So that is all I have for the print methods and the format methods. Outputting data is one of the most important things in beginning to write programs. Digital logic is really easy to understand, but showing the work that you're doing on data or the work that you're doing on the information inside your program is useless unless someone is able to respond to that data in a proper manner. And one of the ways that they can respond to it in a proper manner is when the program informs them properly about what the data is. So just outputting 4 pieces of data is not useful, but putting it together in a simple command line interface report and inputting the data into the string correctly is going to increase the value of your program so much more, and it's going to make your beginner programs look really, really good. So definitely work with the print and check out the format method. Thanks for watching.